And Chairman, you're all set.
All right, fantastic. Calling to order. Economic Development Commission meeting for January 23rd, 2023. Mr. Trejo, would you call the roll?
Absolutely, sir. Commissioner Zelinski. Here. Commissioner Moons. Here. Commissioner Patricia.
Here.
And absent are Commissioner Jacobs and Commissioner Talbot, but we do have a quorum. I'll also let the minutes reflect that the council liaison, Chairman Pro Tem J. Gregory Carl, is in attendance virtually. And then I, Carlos Trejo, the Director of Planning and Community Development, and Don Doty, our Senior Planner, is also in attendance. And then I'll also note in the audience as a panelist is City Manager Barbara Sondag.
Fantastic. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carlos. Just checking to see if we have any public comments. Do we have anybody online? Because the ranks of the seating look rather meek today.
If there is anybody that would like to talk regarding any economic development item, if you can show your hand, it's located at the lower portion of your Zoom screen. Chairman, I see none.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
If I might, I would like to just during the public comment, make one statement.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I am here. I'm in my office. I had a little scheduling conflict. But I wanted to let you folks know, if you don't already, that last week I tendered my letter of resignation as the city manager, effective April 3rd. I'll be moving to Portland, Maine to be with grandkids. And so we have all 4 grandkids on the East Coast now. So we'll be within 2.5 hours of everybody or of the ones there. And so it's with very mixed emotions that I do it. I think it's been a great ride here. And I know that we've accomplished a lot of things. I think this commission over the past 10 years has probably seen more action than a lot of the commissions prior. I think probably some of you didn't even know what you were signing up for. So I want to thank you for everything, because all the progress we've made and all the good things that we've accomplished here have been done through the teamwork of the council, all of our commissions and our commission members, and especially the city staff, people like Carlos and Don. I leave you in very, very good hands. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Sondag.
Is this
Congratulations are in order.
negotiable?
Yeah, right.
Is it final?
Hey, that's good. That's already been asked.
Grandkids, yeah. I mean, grandkids city, grandkids city. What are you gonna do? All right, Carlos, business communications.
Chairman, tonight for our guest speaker, I have Neil Miner, who is with Agrogenesis. He's the Chief Administrative Officer for Agrogenesis LLC, and that's one of Missouri's leading cannabis companies. They do cultivating, manufacturing, and dispensary operations. The company provides cannabis and cannabis-infused products and operates 5 dispensaries in the state of Missouri under the brand name Sunrise, including in Kansas City, St. Louis, Clinton, Macon, and in Maryville. With the passage of Amendment 3 back in November and the ongoing code changes to the municipal code right now, the city council has been doing various changes to the code, addressing the changes that were part of the Amendment 3 process to allow adult use recreational marijuana in there. Right now, we do permit the medical marijuana. The adult use had necessitated some changes to the code, including sections to our smoking ordinance, section to being out in public, walking in public. And then also the council at their last meeting approved an ordinance to put on the ballot in April, starting a 3% tax on sales on recreational adult use marijuana products in there. Anyway, so the council's been working with it. Mr. Miner has interest in the property in the city of Olivet, but he has vast knowledge in the overall cultivation business, both on the state side and then as on the private side as a operator. And we invited him to speak to the commission. I thought it would be a good opportunity to learn and talk about the licensing regulations, the policies and procedures that are being put in place by the state. And then common questions that we've heard about cannabis have been about how they invest and obtain property, and then dealing with money on financing, actual cash transactions and banking. So I thought Mr. Minor would be an excellent source to kind of talk about that to the commission. And if there's any questions, he's got a slide presentation prepared.
Prior to that, can you just detail what council has agreed upon with in our last meeting, there was different stipulations and ordinances that were put into place by the city around cannabis cultivation and.
Correct. If you go back a full year, there was a previous amendment which allowed medical cannabis. In there, we had a petition that was proposed in our industrial parks for a cultivation facility. That being said, the city had in place just as traditional zoning regulations and considered dispensary as a retail type of use similar to a pharmacy based on our classifications. It didn't call out specifically anything regarding cultivation, nor did it call out anything specifically about the infusion products, but they fall under the broad umbrella of manufacturing, warehousing, and things of that nature in our industrial parks. The council, after a petition that was retracted regarding a cultivation facility, directed the planning commission to prepare regulations regarding medical marijuana, and the city adopted what they call Chapter 450 medical marijuana facilities. And in that, cultivation, infusion, manufacturing facilities were restricted. Now these all have to meet state distancing requirements. But in addition to that, the city adopted a buffer requirement for cultivation, manufacturing, infusion facilities from residential properties. And then dispensaries were permitted along the Olive Boulevard corridor. There were no additional buffer requirements outside of meeting the state regulations. And the state required 1,000 feet from schools, places of worship, churches, and daycare facilities. We had those standards in place. And there, the city was authorized, by state statute, the city could have reduced the 1,000 feet if it wanted to. But in this case, the council did not act or choose to do so. And then after this November, the authorization of recreational use or adult use recreation, we went back to the council to incorporate the changes from the state statutes, which now allow not just the medical use, but you could do recreational use. That being said, we had to address other issues regarding how much somebody can carry legally in the process, where you can and can't smoke the product. And also the states changed the way some of the measurement requirements are how things are measured in that process. So they didn't change the buffer, the 1,000-foot distance from schools, churches, places of worship, daycares. And the buffer to residential properties was solely an Olivet regulation.
That's
Okay. That the recommendation to the council and as adopted to the council is that you cannot have a cultivation, an infusion, or a manufacturing facility within 1,000 feet of properties owned single-family residential or used for single-family use. I don't know the specific in there. And impetus, the concern was primarily from residents was that about odor, concerns about odor, and there was other things too. But I think the major thing. So. All right.
specific.
Whoever's speaking, could you turn your mic on?
Sorry, Greg. I remember all the backstory. I know that it was being proposed to council that Olivet have something specific written in, and that's what it was. It was cultivation, manufacturing, 1,000 feet from any single family residence. That's what was adopted. Okay, sorry, that's the backstory.
No problem.
Apologies for being late and for having to get me up to speed on that.
I will also say that there are a couple, we put up a couple of web pages about the specific details, and I thought they were very good. So Carlos, I don't have that link, but I would recommend sending it out.
I will do so. Thank you, sir.
It's on there are links on the agenda from tonight's meeting as well.
Apologies for not reading the agenda in full also.
Actually, that was good. It was a good little synopsis of where we've been. Just one question from that. Since the changes, since we went through that, recreational marijuana is now permitted in the state. Do you see the council having to go back and amend that to change the state?
Yeah, and that, yes, and that's what they've been doing the past month, since the beginning of January. At the first meeting of January for the council, they adopted an ordinance to place on the ballot the 3% tax, and you probably heard that from all the communities that were going through that whole process. But in addition to that, there was a lot of things that the Amendment 3 also required the community to address. One is, you know, that it is now legal to have a certain amount of marijuana in there, and we had to change our ordinances accordingly to reflect that. There was also, you know, the smoking ordinance were specific to smoking, I guess, of tobacco, and now they needed to be addressed, you know, they needed to reference also marijuana products in there, because right now you can't smoke, let's say, outside of Fallon's or Sugar Fires in any, or you can't smoke in a park, and technically you're not supposed to be smoking when you're walking down a sidewalk. So those ordinances had to be changed to reflect that you also could not do the same. So, and then on the zoning side, which is the side Don and I overlooked, we had to change our ordinance to say to no longer just reference medical marijuana facilities, that we were now referencing marijuana facilities, and that authorizes both the medical and the recreational. So all that is ongoing right now in the process. That's why I thought Mr. Minor would be just a good educational aspect of bringing us up to speed from the private side of what's going on.
Perfect timing.
Fantastic. I hope we haven't blown the wind out of your sail or the smoke, perhaps. I don't know if that's appropriate or not. So.
All right.
The floor is yours.
Bear with me 1 second. Let me get his presentation up and
All right.
share on the monitors. And Neil, if you can just check the clicker to make sure that you're
Can you go up to the button where it says slideshow on the top right?
right here.
And hit the, that'll work.
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay. Thank you for having me tonight. As Carlos said, my name is Neil Minor. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for AgriGenesis, which is a vertically integrated cannabis company in the state of Missouri. In my role, I'm responsible for licensing, compliance, government relations, investor relations, real estate management, insurance program, and then whatever else I'm asked to do that doesn't fall in anyone else's bucket. My background is that I have a master's degree in healthcare administration. I also spent 10 years working in insurance, and I spent 10 years as the mayor of my community, which my hometown is Monroe City, Missouri, right down the road from Macon, Missouri, where our company is located. So I have over 20 years of experience in highly regulated industries, and I'm now going into my third year in cannabis. So Carlos asked me to talk about cannabis in general in the state of Missouri, and specifically our company. The legalization of adult use marijuana in Missouri is going to have a overall positive impact on the state of Missouri and in those communities where they allow it to operate. Our company has been in existence now for just over 3 years. We have 120 employees. Our main cultivation facility is located in Macon. That's where the majority of our employees work. But each of the communities where we have a dispensary, we have between 15 and 20 employees in those communities as well. The tax revenue has been at 4% for medical marijuana. When we're moving to recreational, that's going to become 6% tax rate. But communities can also elect to put an additional 3% tax on top of that, with that money staying directly in their community. Additionally, when Amendment 3 passed, Missouri was the first state to ever have the constitutional amendment that completely expunged every criminal record of anyone who ever had a nonviolent marijuana related offense. They don't have to apply for it. They don't have to ask for legal help. It just automatically disappears the day that the amendment was passed. So, brief history of cannabis. It's a plant that's native to Asia. It's been used for traditional medicine and religious purposes for over 5,000 years. It was brought to the New World by the Spaniards in the early 1500s. It rapidly spread across the entire globe throughout the 17 and 1800s, where it was commonly prescribed as a medication. However, beginning in the early 1900s, it began to be prohibited and made illegal, starting with the District of Columbia, and then federally, the Marijuana Tax Act passed in 1937, and it prohibited cannabis and hemp nationwide. Federal government still has THC listed as a controlled substance and having no accepted medical use. However, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, as recently as 2020, began approving THC-based medications, even though the federal government still says it's illegal and has no medicinal purpose. FDA has approved drugs that treat the nausea and that stimulate appetite for chemotherapy, cancer patients, and AIDS patients. Countries in Europe are a little bit further ahead of us. There are multiple different THC-based medications that have already been approved for use throughout most of Europe, and those drugs are currently going through clinical trials here in the US. California was the first state to legalize medical cannabis in the mid-90s. It's now legal in 39 states and the District of Columbia. Mississippi just passed it back in November with their election. Adult use cannabis, which refers to 21 and over, just like alcohol. Washington and Colorado were the first two states to legalize it in 2012. It's now legal in 21 states. And in November, Missouri, Maryland, and Rhode Island became the three most current states to legalize adult use cannabis. In every state in which it is legal, whether it's medical, adult use, or both, it is highly regulated, more so than alcohol, probably along the lines of pharmaceutical companies are the regulations that are in place on that.
You know what, I clicked that clicker.
Okay, this is just a map that shows the states where recreational and adult use, or where medical and adult use are currently legal. This is an interactive map. You'll have a copy of this slideshow. If you're interested, you can go to that site and you can look at it as you hover over each state. It gives you more information about when it was passed and what their regulations are. Even in some of the states that are gray, that have not legalized it, they have decriminalized it, which means that if you are stopped in traveling through Kansas and you have a small amount of cannabis on you, you're not going to go to jail. You're not going to get it confiscated. You're not going to get a ticket, but they haven't legalized it. They don't regulate it yet. They just don't write tickets for it anymore. So some of the common ailments that are treated by cannabis, this is a small list of what they are. It's very common to be prescribed by doctors for PTSD, anything that causes any sort of treatment that causes nausea or suppresses the appetite. It's a common prescription for, and diseases such as epilepsy and multiple sclerosis, where they have trouble controlling their muscles and muscular skeletal system. It's becoming a very common prescription for that as well. So I'm not going to read all of this because I'm not on the side that knows the biology and the chemistry behind cannabis plants, but commonly, even though there's 113 different cannabinoid compounds found within the marijuana plant, there are two that specifically get used in making products. One being THC, which has a psychoactive effect. It calms the nerves. It gives the feeling of having a head rush or being high. And the other one is CBD, which CBD has been legal and put into infused products for multiple years now, and is not as highly regulated as THC. The CBD is the anticonvulsant part of it, which is used, which helps with the epilepsy and the multiple sclerosis type diseases. Cannabis plants that have less than 0.3% THC are not regulated. Those became legal by the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018. Hemp can be bought just about anywhere. You can even go online and buy it, and it can be shipped straight to your door. It's no longer considered a controlled substance by the federal government. So the most common method that people use to consume cannabis is by smoking it. The flower or the bud is picked directly off of the plant. It's dried, it's placed into a jar, or it's ground up and placed into a pre-roll that is then smoked. Additionally, the remainder of the plant and the trimmings from the plant can be distilled to make almost pure THC. It's a thick motor oil type liquid. And from that, the liquid can be used to make vape pens that go in vaporizers. It can be baked to make products such as shatter. Can't even tell you what all of them are. I don't know. I'm not a big consumer myself, so I can't tell you what they are. But that distillate can then be infused into food products and beverages and vape pens, or it can be baked and turned into things that are called butter and batter. And I just heard these words. I don't really know what these products are. If it is smoked, the onset of the effects are almost immediate. If it comes through an edible product, it can take up to 90 minutes for the patient or the consumer to feel the effects. And depending on the amount consumed and the potency, it can last for several hours. A recent Gallup poll at the end of 2022 showed that for the first time ever, more people in the United States smoke cannabis than cigarettes. And that is probably a trend that is just going to continue as the years go by. So a little bit about our company. The name of our company is Agrigenesis LLC. We operate our dispensaries under the trade name of Sunrise. We are vertically integrated. We have dispensary licenses, cultivation licenses, and one license to make infused edibles in our manufacturing facility. I do want to point out, we are only talking about opening a dispensary in Olivet, not a cultivation facility, not an infused product manufacturing facility. So we do have a very experienced team of executives. Combined, they have over 50 years of experience in the cannabis market in other states. I think you would be hard pressed to find a company in the state of Missouri whose executive team is made up solely of people who were born and raised in Missouri. When it became legal in this state, Missouri had to import people with the knowledge of how to run these companies from other states. So that is what the majority of our executive team is made up of people who have been operating in other states for multiple years. Combined, the members of our team that have over 50 years of experience have managed over 100 dispensaries in 15 different states. We're looking to grow in Missouri. So this is our cultivation facility in Macon. It is an industrial park on the north side of town. It was built from the ground up, designed by our director of cultivation. We have enough property that we're going to expand. We have 3 cultivation licenses, and we're currently only utilizing one of them inside of this facility. So we're going to expand to be able to utilize our other 2 licenses. Until we begin and finish that construction, we also can use our licenses to grow outdoor, which we plan on doing during this 2023 growing season. So inside the facility, Our employees wear scrubs, they wear masks, they wear gloves, they wear hair nets. They treat these plants like they're medicine. They baby them, they doctor them. We have employees who name the plants because they see them all day long, every day, and they take care of them like their children. That was from last fall when the medical marijuana director for the state of Missouri, Lyndall Frager, toured our facility. And these are a few of the 36 different strains that we have currently grown in our facility. We own the genetics to grow, I want to say 145 different strains. We haven't gotten to all of them yet. And the ones that we do have seem to be doing really well, and they're in high demand. And so we just continue to grow a lot of the same ones over again. And as we get time, we introduce new strains into the market.
So is it like IP, like the recipe or the different strains? Like, can you trademark or patent a certain strain and make it yours?
They are not ours. They have come
Okay.
from other cultivators in other states. So the state of Missouri offered something called a window of immaculate conception, because it is illegal to transport cannabis across state lines. So they said that from the day that we had received our approval to operate, we had 365 days for all of our strains to magically appear in our facility with no questions asked. And so that's what we did. We made a catalog. We have a seed bank of all of this, and that time is now passed. Our window is closed. We have all of the strains that we will ever have in Missouri, unless at some point we build a research and development department and start cultivating our own strains.
But then if you do, can you register a strain? I guess?
Yes,
Okay, so people own that. Okay.
yes. We do have an infused edibles manufacturing department. The products that we make are branded under 3 separate brand names: Notorious, Farmer G, and just recently, 10 days ago, we launched a new product called Willie's Reserve. We are the only company in the state of Missouri to have an exclusive deal with Willie Nelson's Cannabis Company, and we grow this cannabis for him in our facility, and we are the only ones in the state who distribute that product. I should have mentioned early on, the founder of our company is Richard Gunnels. He's a 3rd-generation farmer in Macon. He started the company because he knows plants. He had family members who he saw treated with cannabis in other states and saw how they responded to the medication. And when the opportunity arose, he wanted to found this company. So our Farmer G brand is based on Richard Gunnels as the founder of the company. Currently in our manufacturing facility, in addition to producing just the jars of the flowers and the pre-rolls, we are also making the concentrates, and we are distilling the trim and selling wholesale distillate to other manufacturers, as well as using it to fill our own vape pens. Our cultivation and manufacturing facility has been nominated by Greenway Magazine for Best of the Industry voting. We've been nominated for Best Company, Best Cultivator, Package Design, Flower Cultivar, and Best Pre-roll. And I think the voting for that closed on January 15th. So hopefully pretty soon we'll know whether or not we are best in the industry in Missouri. In the future, we're going to expand our manufacturing capabilities. We're going to be producing infused edibles, gummies, hard candies, drink mixes, drink powders. And we've also been doing some testing on freeze-dried candy. It's gone over very well in research and development, and we hope to introduce that to the market in the future. So our dispensaries, that's what we're actually proposing to do here in Olivet. We have 5 dispensary licenses across the northern half of Missouri. We actually have a dispensary in St. Louis right now. We petitioned the state to move that dispensary to Olivet, and they approved us to do that in March of last year. After we were approved for that was when I started meeting with Carlos, and at the time, had we went ahead and moved forward with everything, we could be operating that dispensary right now without going to public hearings and attending city council meetings. But we wanted to wait and see what happened with recreational before we invested a lot of money, since we've already invested a lot of money in downtown St. Louis. And in the meantime, all of that, well, you all know the history. So that's why we're here now.
So where's the current one at?
It is actually on Michigan Avenue in the Carondelet neighborhood.
Oh, like, okay, Loughborough, okay.
So the building that says Sunrise Dispensary around the top of it, that's actually our Kansas City location. The one that's painted blue with the yellow doors, our Maryville location. Sales floor is inside our Macon location, and the lobby picture is in our Clinton location. So all of the sales floors look very similar from one location to the next. All the lobbies look similar from one to the next. And we will incorporate our standard brand colors of yellow and blue and white into our location here as well. Our retail dispensaries have also been nominated for several categories in Greenway Magazine's Best of the Industry voting, Best Company, Best Dispensary, and Best Loyalty Program. So, as you know, Amendment 3 passed on November 8th, which legalized adult use cannabis in the state of Missouri. This will actually go live on February 6th. As of today, it's legal to possess cannabis and grow cannabis in the state of Missouri. It's not yet legal to sell it in the state of Missouri. On February 6th, that will change. I already talked about those things, but 21 years and older, nonviolent former marijuana offenders have already had their records expunged. This allows the city of Olivet or any community to add an additional 3% sales tax, with the revenue going directly to their community. And it increases the tax from 4% to 6%. However, patients can choose to keep their medical card and continue paying 4% sales tax instead of the 6% sales tax.
So when you say the go live date's February 6th, when medical happened, it took the state a long time to get its ducks in a row. So are we saying it's legally able to do it and the state will be ready to do it on February 6th?
We already have dispensaries in Missouri.
Yeah.
Those dispensaries were able to apply to change their license from medical to what they're calling comprehensive. Comprehensive means adult use recreational. So it's happened much faster this time around because the dispensaries already exist. And if their licenses are approved to switch from medical to recreational, then they can start selling to people without a medical card on February 6th. Additionally, with Amendment 3, it authorized the state to issue up to 144 new licenses with 18 in each of the 8 congressional districts. However, the new licenses are only going to be issued to people who fit the criteria of coming from a disadvantaged background. They're going to roll these out over a 3-year period of time. It's going to be a lottery system. There's no 185-page application saying why you're qualified to run a cannabis company. They haven't released the applications yet, but from my understanding, it's a 1-page application and they are randomly going to be drawn. And as long as you fit the criteria of coming from a disadvantaged background, you will be issued a license. They're going to do these 2 different ways. One of them will be a dispensary license. The other one will be a combined cultivation and infused product manufacturing license. Other states have done very similar things, whether they call it social equity or disadvantaged populations. It has not worked very well in other states, primarily because it costs a lot of money to turn a license piece of paper into a functioning company. And if you give a license to someone from a disadvantaged background, they probably don't have the money to be able to get it up and running. So I can see that there's probably going to be a lot of partnerships formed between people who get licenses and people who have the money to make it happen. But the licensee will have to maintain at least 50% ownership of that license throughout the lifetime of that license. So Illinois did the same thing in 2022. Now, as of the end of the year, 3 of those licenses were actually in the process of becoming operational, but none of them were operational yet.
So are licenses transferable at all?
Yes,
So you guys could sell your licenses?
yes.
Okay.
long
What-
drawn out process and the whole thing has to be, every step has to be approved by the state.
What constitutes disadvantage, and does the transfer have to fall under that stipulation?
So there is a definition within Amendment 3, and I don't know the exact verbiage off the top of my head. It's people who fall below a certain percentage of the federal poverty level with their income in 2 out of the last 10 years. It's people who come from populations that historically have been hurt by cannabis prohibition and regulation. I want to say veterans fall into that group as well. There's about 4 or 5 different criteria that qualify someone to be disadvantaged.
But it's something that comes from within the amendment. It's
Yes.
not just a general.
No.
Okay.
There's specific language that defines that. I know there's a lot of questions around crime in cannabis. And when I was a little kid, federal government started things like the DARE program, and they told everybody that marijuana was the gateway drug. If kids started with marijuana, they would move on to harder drugs. Recent research has shown that actually marijuana is not the gateway drug to harder drugs. It's the gateway to the drug dealer who will then push harder drugs on people. And if someone is already used to meeting with a drug dealer and interacting with them, the drug dealer wants to make more money, and they're going to be peddling harder and harder drugs because the introduction has already been made. So multiple studies have also shown that crime actually decreases in markets where cannabis is legalized because it eliminates the black market and the gang-related activity that goes along with that black market. This is a very highly regulated industry. The Missouri Division of Cannabis, the Missouri Division of Cannabis Regulation, which up until 30 days ago was the Division of Medical Marijuana, is overseen by the Department of Health and Senior Services. They outline pretty strictly and stringently how we are allowed to operate and what our security features need to look like. All of our facilities are covered with cameras 24/7. We have 60 days of video backup. We're able to operate all of our facilities for up to 24 hours if the power goes out. The state has access to our cameras and can log in at any time they want to view what's going on in our facilities. We have glass break sensors, we have motion detectors, we have panic alarm buttons throughout all of our facilities. All of the product is removed from the sales floor and placed in the vault at the end of every night. The vault is secure. It would take heavy duty tools to get into the vault, no matter which direction they came from. And before anyone is allowed to enter the dispensary, they have to show a government issued ID at a registration checkpoint. Their ID has to be verified before they're even allowed back onto the sales floor. Typically, the sales floor, we don't actually keep live product there. We keep samples and packaging. And when an order is placed, someone will go to the vault and get that product and bring it back out to them.
Is the state, or have they been sending actual on-site auditors to locations to?
Yes.
And how often do they usually come to?
So I meant to mention that. They do an annual inspection. Although they also sometimes just show up unannounced and do a walkthrough, but they did a formal annual inspection. They did that in all 5 of our dispensaries in August, September, and October. And we scored 100% compliance in all of our dispensary locations. They just did their annual visit to our cultivation manufacturing facility, and we've not received their report yet. So there's also a lot of questions regarding property values of homes that are close to cannabis facilities. I can tell you that our cultivation facility in Macon, which is an industrial park, as I drive up to it, if I have my window down, I can smell cannabis from 100 yards away. That's just the reality of the facility. That's why it's located where it is. With our dispensary facilities, even if you walk in and you're on the sales floor, because we have charcoal filters throughout our HVAC system, we have odor canisters throughout the facility. there's not an odor of cannabis unless you go into the product vault, and then it smells like cannabis. So a housing study that was completed by the National Association of Realtors showed that home values in cities that allow retail dispensaries increased nearly 23,000 more from 2014 to 2019 than in cities where marijuana is illegal. A Cato research finding also showed that homes in close proximity within a 1/10 of a mile to marijuana retail dispensaries have actually increased in value. So the overall economic impact statewide, as of the end of December 2022, cannabis sales have exceeded 600 million since they started in October of 2020. In 2022 alone, they were nearly 400 million. That has generated more than 24 million in sales tax dollars, which the state's dollars are earmarked for veterans care, veterans health and mental health services. And recreational cannabis in Missouri is expected to be $1 billion industry within the next few years. Locally, we're anticipating that our dispensary, should it be located in Olivet, in the first year is going to have nearly $3 million in sales and will grow to 5.5 to 6 million over the next few years. That means the sales tax revenue to the city of Olivet is going to start at about 120,000 and grow to nearly 250,000 over that time. We'll start with 20 employees, grow to 30 to 35. We'll have a payroll in this community that's nearly $1 million within a couple of years. And the last thing I want to say is that recreational cannabis is going to be purchased by local residents and people in surrounding communities. They can either go to those communities and buy it, or they can come here and buy it and let Olivet reap some of the benefit of the sales that are going to take place anyway. So with that, I want to say thank you for your time, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Very thorough, very thorough.
So why us? Why here? What makes this location so much more desirable than your other one?
There's a lot of things that make it much more desirable. We are a retail location. Retail locations rely on customers being able to find you, being able to see you. Olive Boulevard has, trying to remember now, close to 40,000 vehicles a day that go down Olive Boulevard. Where we're currently at, there's 2,500 vehicles a day. Where we're currently at is in a fairly high crime neighborhood. The black market deals happen on the street corner right outside our dispensary. Our patients told us they didn't feel comfortable leaving our dispensary after dark with a product. There's a lack of available transportation in the neighborhood that we're in, and people did not want to have to walk to our dispensary and walk back home, even in daylight hours, carrying their products. So overall, the socioeconomic aspect of Olivet is much more attractive than where we're currently at. Additionally, our license was awarded in Congressional District 1. It has to remain in Congressional District 1. And this is just about as far west as we can go and remain in Congressional District 1. We did look at several other locations further east of here. They didn't have near the traffic count. The building wasn't quite the right size. There were just a number of factors that led us to this location in this building.
What's the building? Is there a specific location that we're talking about?
Yes, we already have a lease on the building at 9270 Olive Boulevard.
It's right at Dolores, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And what corner is that? Is that the west or the east?
The east corner.
He's a well-knowledge. Give me an address. He's like, oh, yeah, I knew he lived there 20 years ago. They got issues with their foundation.
It was on Facebook.
Yes.
9270.
And that's the truck, the gray building, yeah, which was,
What's the closest thing that I would know that lives next to it?
The Price Crossing Shopping Center,
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
east. No, oh yes, our building is just west of there. One of the things that Carlos asked us to include in our site plan because they said the city of Olivet already had an easement for a cut through to the Crossing Shopping Center, and our site plan includes that. That would mean that people trying to exit Dolores Avenue onto Olive Boulevard would have a method of getting to a stoplight to get out on the Olive Boulevard, instead of trying to turn left off of Dolores.
Even though there is a sign in that parking lot prohibiting cut-throughs to the light or to avoid the light, I think, so, but imagine that can be rectified. If that
And,
need
but
be.
that's a separate requirement. The easement authorizes its use.
Right.
So it would be exempt from that. Yes.
So other states are much further down the road than us, right?
There are other states, yes.
So what lessons have we learned from them? In terms of other hurdles they've overcome, so the crime you've mentioned, financing.
When medical became legal in Missouri, the way that amendment was written was that all Missouri companies had to have at least 50% Missouri ownership. So not only did the executive teams of a lot of these companies come in from out of state, but the companies had to raise money to do their build outs to become operational. But that amount was limited to 49% of the dollars that they could raise. That has since been found, that was challenged in court and has since been found to become unconstitutional. So going forward, Missouri companies do not have to be 50%, 51% owned by Missouri residents. And with recreational adult use passing in Missouri, there will probably be a large influx of out-of-state dollars to help continue building out facilities and ramping up.
Now, right now, it's still early in the location of all these places, but where would be your closest competitor?
About 1 mile to the west, there is a Terabis cannabis dispensary in Creve Coeur. And about 1 mile to the east, in University City, there's I think it's called Starbuds dispensary.
Right.
I think they're both actually just a little over a mile away, but a mile to mile and a half in either direction on both of them are on Olive Boulevard.
And there's nothing with regards to the current legislation that says that they have to be a certain distance away
No.
from each other.
No,
I thought there was a separation distance for in minimal, like around 1,000 feet between facilities.
I know that's a city of Olivet.
Yeah, I know we have
regulation,
it
but
in
it's
there.
not within the state regulations.
We have the plans for this building, like, have we seen the drawings? Have we seen-
Yeah, the petition's been submitted to the plan commission and it's going through a review process. I'd be glad to show them to you. I mean, I just want to make sure the focus we're kind of educating the EDC about the.
Well, this is going out
Yeah.
at market, right? We're not,
Pardon?
this is,
Mhm. Yeah, we're there's nothing is being sought from the city for financing purposes.
is there, like, is the city planning from a finance, I know Darren's not here, but from a finance perspective, how quickly are you gonna turn the lights on in this place? If we're good to go, the first week of February, when are we knocking on your front door?
So the city of Olivet is not going to approve us by the first week of February. I think from what Carlos and I have discussed, it's probably going to be mid-March before we know for sure if we can actually open this dispensary here. At that point, that building needs some pretty extensive renovations, and we're thinking that it's going to be a 3 to 5 month renovation process. And which would put us sometime into June or July at the earliest before we would turn the lights on and open the door.
So from a tax revenue standpoint, we're $60,000 to $80,000 in calendar year 23, based on your forecast.
Well, one of the things I'd like to just make clear is that the city really haven't, and the Economic Development Commission really kind of knows this, we haven't really sought specific businesses for for tax income. We've worked with trying to get certain services here, residents here. We've tried, we do what we can to work with businesses. But we haven't really solicited any specific type of business. We don't know, like the extra 3% that has to be approved by the residents on the April 4th ballot. So that wouldn't go into effect until I think 30 days after that, kind of anyway. And so we're starting our budget process for the next year, and we wouldn't take into consideration, they wouldn't be open, we probably wouldn't take into consideration any specific increase in sales taxes because of one specific business. We kind of want to see what it is. I mean, because at this point, that's one of the things is we don't really know what people, what we're going to get.
So the 3%, is that in the regulations that the public has to vote on that? And is that a de facto way of residents being able to keep these businesses out of the community? Or if the residents say no, can they still open the business?
It's not unusual, the 3% tax, anytime there's an additional sales tax, it's not unusual that is approved, any local option tax that gets approved by that goes as a ballot question. In this case, Amendment 3 specifically stated that political subdivisions could vote on the 3% a local option, but it couldn't take effect until after it had gone to the public on a vote. Now that's different from you may hear Amendment 3 also allows either by order of the council or petition of the residents to do a vote to see, basically asking, do you want to not have adult recreation dispensaries in your city? That's different from medical dispensaries. It's adult recreation. That can't go on the ballot until the presidential election in November election of 2024. And in fact, it would be premature for the council couldn't make that decision, nor could we accept a petition until you get about 6 months, I think, before that time period. It would be premature to accept anything like that. Now, companies and businesses, like Mr. Miners here, those owners are well aware of Amendment 3, and they're well aware of, what would happen if kind of thing. So that's all part of their, business decisions.
How many other city councils are you talking to?
None right now.
Just to clarify, Barb, they've basically got more of a free rein now until 2024 with regards to citizens having a say in whether or not they want a dispensary or not. Is that
Citizens, individual, citizens, they'll come to the planning commission meeting, they'll come to the city council, they'll have their say kind of in those types of things, but it's really not until we cannot, by the constitutional amendment, and I always like to remind people, it is a constitutional amendment, it's not just a state law. It does have a little bit more power emphasis. For whatever reason, that's part of it, that they can't take that vote until November of 2024. And that was part of the Amendment 3, and Amendment 3, passed in the city, of Olivet, and it passed in the state. So
you can kind of see both sides of it, in that our citizens are always going to have their voice in it, but they will not have a a mechanism that is usually given to them.
Right.
But in order for them, for an industry to be able to take hold without, which is somewhat controversial,
Mhm,
to be able to take hold without too many impediments.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's really the writers of the amendment who would know the intent of that. But you know, the voters who approved it.
So Amendment 3 was passed within the city limits of Olivet by more than 60% of the voters. I guess there's two different mechanisms that the city of Olivet could put the question to the residents of whether or not they want to allow adult use cannabis facilities within their community. The city council can do that, or the citizens can garner enough petitions to get it onto the ballot. So if we were to move forward and we opened a dispensary here and that made it to the ballot in November of 2024, my hope is that the same 60+% of the people who passed Amendment 3 and all of that would also show up to the polls to say that they'd like to still have a cannabis dispensary within their community.
Yeah, I guess, that kind of leads us to, at least in my mind, like, how do you find a way to connect with the community in a positive way? Let's say if it's a June grand opening, from June to the fall of 2024, to make sure that those 60% show up. And or that maybe it doesn't even need to be on the ballot, because what Sunrise has done in Olivet has been such a positive thing. And I guess that's my question, like, how have you connected with previous communities to make sure that what was, I think some people view it as controversial. I don't necessarily, but how do you connect with those communities to make sure it's a positive experience, both for people who need product from a medical standpoint and potentially enjoy it recreationally, and to the community members who are maybe a little bit more hesitant?
So in all of the communities that we operate in, at the local level, we join the Chamber of Commerce. We let each of the staff at each local place choose charities and social service organizations that they want to contribute to. We give our employees paid time to go and volunteer for different organizations within the community. And we encourage our staff members to get involved and make it known who they are throughout the community. And just, be part of the communities that they're living and working in.
This would be a hell of a turkey trot. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I was really holding my tongue, David.
No, it would be.
A new offering on Turkey Trot morning, yeah.
It's gonna go right down all of.
You know that, like, in the back of my mind, like, we usually have 4 kegs, but maybe we'll change it up this year. No, but it's a real question, right? There's gonna be a loud potential based on the voting minority who are gonna wanna make noise, and, the people who are in support of it need to understand their correct talking points, like some of the data you presented tonight. And at the same time, like, we hope that it's a uneventful location if it doesn't go in. That
Well,
we
gives
don't have.
Gives you the
issues.
opportunity to have an uneventful opening.
Right.
And I think that's more eloquently put by Mr. Moons rather than myself, but yes, I understand why it is that way.
So we were here last Thursday night for the planning commission. There were somewhere between 15 and 20 citizens who showed up who voiced their opposition. And I understand where some of them were coming from. They had what they feel are legitimate concerns about this. I don't think they fully understand how we operate or what our dispensaries look like or the security that's around them. But I think there were also some who were just reacting to the words cannabis and marijuana. And without taking a critical look at their community and understanding that there are already dozens of facilities within this community that sell products that are more addictive and more harmful than anything that comes out of our dispensary. And if they would actually analyze what's on the store shelves and what's coming out of fast food restaurants, they'd understand that there's already unsafe products in the community, and ours is not one of those.
one thing I just want to make you aware of is that we have a very educated community. Remember, we've got Bayer now and the Danforth Plant Science Center sitting right there. We got a lot of PhDs in our community, right? Chemical, biological PhDs. So they will talk the details with you, believe me. They've read all the reports, they understand the science. So I just want to warn you there. Okay.
Sure, who's warning? No, point well taken.
Yeah, I don't have any questions or comments, at least.
I
from
just
my
say-
chair. Thanks for being here.
No,
It
very,
was
very
really-
professional presentation. I think you hit a lot of really good points. And you know, we really don't have anything to say, just maybe from a personal standpoint, because it's not a voting matter or anything like this. It's just informational. But this is, it seems to be like it's a good thing, and it seems like you're going to handle it well.
Can I ask one more question?
Go ahead.
What do you, using your crystal ball, what do you see as the, coming down the pike and you're in this industry with regard to financial institutions? I mean, that's always one of the things that people will talk about, cash business and things like that. I know that with regard to, one of the things that is difficult with your business because the federal government still sees it as an illegal substance. There are a lot of different, pay a lot more taxes than most other industries. But do you see the financial institutions getting ahead of the federal government with regard to any kind of, opening up of the relaxing of the rules? I mean, would you see in the near future someone coming in using a credit card?
I would really hope so. Banking is very difficult for us. Any institution that is FDIC insured, they're prohibited from doing business with us. And if they did, they could risk being raided and having all their cash confiscated until it was determined what the source of it was. So banks stay completely away from us. We can deal with credit unions, and that's what we do. Transactions within our dispensary are cash only transactions. Credit card companies and banks that issue debit cards are not going to allow their customers to use those to purchase cannabis. So everything is a cash transaction. We use armored couriers to come by and pick up our cash and transport it to our credit union for deposit. And it would be extremely helpful if we could do business with banks. It's been discussed the last several years that in the federal government to release the prohibition on banks doing business with cannabis companies, but so far that hasn't gotten any traction. I do think that within the next 5 years it will, though.
But myself out there and just say from my own experience, I have a daughter who lives in Denver. I've been there a few times, and they do take plastic.
So they must have a local credit union that is
Right.
issuing debit cards.
Right.
Although in Illinois, you can use a card, but they process it like you're taking money from the ATM. So
Hmm.
if your purchase is
Right.
$56, they will round it up to $60 and give you change back. You can only use your card in multiples of 20 at their checkout.
There's a way around it.
Mhm.
Thank you, Greg. Monroe City, is that where you used to have an alligator in the gas station?
Not that I remember.
All right, Mr. Reiner, thank you very much for coming out. Very informative. Great, good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
And Chairman, can I use it, part of, the Economic Development Commission for me and others helps us kind of analyze, the impact of developments. The commission's not being requested to provide a recommendation or opinion, or they're looking for that. But I think from Don and I, we look for the commission on how do we address economic development issues and encourage, investment in our community? And when we presented the petition to the Planning and Community Design Commission last week, we talked about, our comprehensive plan sets our land use policy. There's 4 focus areas: community identity and image, economic development, public spaces, and transportation connections. So, one of the things we're dealing with is this is a 17,900 square foot parcel in there. It's one of those, it's too small, too big type of parcels. It should have probably been part of a bigger development that occurred next door, back in 2004. Access is limited. They got a curb cut right at the intersection in there. The structure was built back in 1960. It's got a C+ grade by the county, but everybody's always going to try to, appeal their taxes and be graded down as low as possible. But since its peak appraised value, it's dropped 13%. So from 475, I think it's at like around 395 or something, 1,000 in there. So it's a property that's in decline. It's a crappy building. It's, the primary tenant that was the property owner, ceased. It was occupying half of the space and no longer does after COVID. The other tenant space had a continual mix of changes in tenants, every year or two, and mostly hospice type related, very general, didn't have any significant impact or anything except for occupying space in there. So, when we approached the commission, based on what we heard from the commission, there was a lot of, I don't know how to best to put it, but kind of like moral judgment about what this type of use and all that. But setting that aside, and what we have to take a look at and looking at, the numerical facts of the size of the property, what's there, and then our comprehensive plan and how do we address them. And so, as we noted that we assess our developments based on the plan, a lot of people kind of talked about image, and I think they had it correct. It's like, well, do we want to be a community that has a dispensary? Well, our neighboring communities do. They're along the corridor, and it's not necessarily about the image, but really what is the reflected of the investment of that occupant that we need to take a look at. And we've had that discussion with Mr. Minor. What are they bringing into the community? Kind of like what Mr. Moons had noted. This is an old, tired building, and it needs more than just a paint, in there. And and they're looking and working on a site plan. Some of the other issues that were talked about were about safety. In there is a safety in terms of traffic because of the way the site is configured. We think we can address that because we secured an easement back in 2004 when they developed the shops. We can close one of the entrances on Olive or minimize access on one of the entrances of Olives to limit it to in and out only. Utilize Dolores a little bit more effectively in there, and that should address some things. Now, Dolores and Kenneth, they're old streets and they're very narrow streets, and we've heard complaints about, well, there's not, people parking on the street, you can't get through and all that. And those are things that are, there's solutions that we can come and put in place to try to address those issues or work with the community there to do so. The other thing was the proximity to Villa Park, which was further down. Again, that there's nothing within the regulations that should limit a type of use if it's done well and operates well. And again, the state also has some safety standards that are incorporated within our ordinance that the petitioner needs to meet. There is a bus stop there at the corner, and we don't determine our land use improvements based on where the school district places bus stops, but there is a bus stop there at that corner, and there are going to be kids there in the morning. And we talked to Mr. Minor about being sensitive of the issue of when those drop-offs occur and things like that, and what we can do to provide some sense of security in that process in there. And then it was I can't think of what are some of the other items. I'm not saying that there was all encompassing, but again, I look at this as there needs to be a way to balance and reinvigorate this parcel. I mean, yes, somebody could buy it, they can tear it down. There's not much space to do once you consider parking and how much square footage you can get back for that return and what they're probably paying for the site itself. regarding the existing building in itself, yeah, 5,000, it's about 5,000 square feet. So usually that means it's a little too small for, let's say, like the Chipotle's, and it's too big, it's too big for the Chipotle's, but too small for the Applebee's. And certainly there's just not enough land area there to do any of those in there. So we got to be creative in how we take a look at it. We're not looking to wipe out this area and create a development area in any way. We have a lot of established residential and new investment going in those streets. So we're trying to find a sensitive balance of how to do this best, how to do it well, and how to do it, in a way that exemplifies the Olivet vision of creating something dynamic. So again, are there any thoughts or suggestions from the commission? I think we're looking at this as broad as we can and try and be specific to some of the facts.
So would the front door be pointed towards Olive or on Dolores? 'Cause there's
There
a-
will be a door, the retail door would be facing Dolores,
Okay,
and then
the
the
red door
employment
that's there
door,
now.
yeah, it would be on the other side.
There's parking there?
Yeah, there's about a side of this side, I think, based on the plans required 12, and there's about 15 stalls on the side. And then they're working with some of the neighboring properties that are securing some
Is
additional
there-
sites.
And you're thinking there's an easement to access the Shops at Price Crossing property?
Yes, there
And there's a retaining
is
wall there.
an easement, yes, so they'll have to do some modifications, but right at that point where I think Sugar Fire usually puts the van,
Right.
it's almost level at that point, right within that first aisle. And that probably they're gonna access in there. There is a little grade deviation there, but it's doable.
And I think the adjacent property is residential.
Yeah, right behind them, there is a single family home. It was brought to our attention that it's rented, and then adjacent to that
Been
is
rented for quite a while.
a
I've
new
been in-
construction.
I've been in that,
Okay.
yes. I think we sold it once. So. Yeah. But based on what you're saying, I think it makes sense from that standpoint. The, the image thing. This is a change in perception that as soon as you get a change in perception of, something which was illegal, now it is legal, people are going to have issues with it. But as time goes by, this is really going to be a non-issue, I think.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think.
Yeah, people are always gonna have something to say about it, but I've spent time in Denver, and some of these places are in great, great neighborhoods. They're opulent. They're just, they blend into the streetscape. There's, I guess, there's another dispensary that's, I think it's open now, at the corner of Lindbergh and Ladue. Used to be PNC Bank.
Mhm.
Who would have thought that would have been there? So,
Yeah, I think that's PCDC's job to make sure was Firestone great for us from an image standpoint? I don't know. But does it look like the nicest Firestone I've ever seen? Yeah, I think it does. And I think that would be the challenge for PCDC to figure out from an economic standpoint. I mean, the math is great. This is like found money. I know Barb says we're not going to build it into the budget, but she's going to be gone. So who cares? But it's found money. It's high revenue found money. I know we're not going to bank on it, but it's still, you're building the budget for 24 at least. Seems like we were analyzing this, we would, from an economic standpoint, we would be like the math between what's there now and what is coming is a no brainer. So
We wouldn't know what to do because they're not asking for money.
exactly, we wouldn't know how to argue because there's nothing to argue. So that's all I got.
well, the thing is, anything been in economics, anything can be distilled down to money. But sometimes, things like quality of life and that, it's difficult to do, but from a standpoint of Is this good for the economy of our town? Yes.
Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Right. All right, moving right along, individual business outreach.
Thank you. Neil.
Yeah, thanks again. Anyone have a chance to talk to anyone? Really cold and snowy winter we've had so far? Not I. Still out there. All right, moving on, 5-year economic development plan. Carlos, did we have anything specific? to
Nothing new.
discuss?
I know, Ms. Doty's been collecting a lot of data for our upcoming comprehensive plan. In just a second, but, we are looking at trying to, I think, prior to our November meeting, one of the requests was to collect some historical data for comparison purposes. And that's something we're working on, as part of the comp plan update and things Don's been putting together. So,
Okay, fantastic.
Mhm.
Any other business before us?
The only thing I wanted to say about the comprehensive plan was the upcoming coffee with the mayor. If, anybody who's interested besides yourselves in knowing more about the comprehensive plan, please encourage them to attend the coffee with the mayor on February 8th. We will be presenting with Beth Quindry, who is our consultant from Shockey Consulting for the comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive plan is done, or you're gonna
No,
present the
no.
outline for what will be the work done?
Kickoff
to
process.
Okay.
It's really to try to get people involved and excited to contribute their contact information to get them involved, period.
Isn't there a task force like that's been established for this
Yes.
already?
And they'll be engaged in that process.
Are you on this task force?
Yes.
Apparently, yeah.
Oh, well done.
I'm extending the reach of the task force. to
for
Anybody who
you.
talks to me is probably gonna talk about the comprehensive plan.
Turkey trot's a big part of it, so sign them up.
I hope not.
All right, if there's nothing else, we have meeting minutes. We've had a look from November 28th. I did see one thing. It just says, in the business communication, the last thing there, just says I met with the owner of Plan Having and I just met with the manager on duty.
Oh, I thought it was Miss Stella. Sorry.
No, I asked, either Miss or Mr. was not there at the time, so.
All right, I'll get that corrected.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It's the change I had. All right. Pending the change.
Please
don't
use
have
your
to do-
microphone. Yeah, if you're gonna.
We don't have to approve the minutes, we just accept them.
Oh, then we accept it.
There we go. All right, and city reports, city staff reports.
Okay, just a couple of things. We're meeting with representatives of the Opus project there, right off of Alice Place behind Chevy's and CVS. They, given some of the market conditions, they held off on any further improvements out on the site. Everything's been cleared and there's still owners, and we anticipate probably somewhere late fall, early winter, that they would start commencing construction on that project again, that they'll come back in line. And that's not out of the ordinary. It took Easy Storage, it took us 5 years to get them moving, which would be the next thing is Easy Storage is finally starting to get off the ground. They're working on putting the foundation. And then they should start seeing something more three-dimensional, hopefully by next month on that project. The UPS store is working on the tenant improvements right next to Plant Haven. He's anxious and looking forward to moving over there. We're reaching out to Bianco Properties to start discussions about some of their spaces, especially with Party City declaring bankruptcy, and if that would be impacted or not, we don't know. But see what they hear and all that. Back on the east side at I-170, the full shell of the apartment structure is complete. in there, so things should start moving in pretty quickly. Within the interior, he's looking, I think, for August occupancy of some sort. And then tomorrow at the city council, he'll be providing an update. He's in the 5th year of the TIF. And he will have I guess it's required a public hearing. And he'll give the council an update of where he is in the progress and where he anticipates to be within the next years. I think his development agreement gives him till 2024 to be at substantial completion. On there. Rebel Cup opened up earlier this month. So that was great. And then Sugar Fire Pie was on Fox 2 this morning. And that's about all I have.
What's next
On the-
for the crossings? Greg's development.
So he received commission approval for the first retail building, which is closest to the ramps, right by that basin. In there, and that's about a 5-tenant retail structure that's anchored with restaurants on both sides. That was back almost February 2022, so we're still waiting for him to apply for permits. Now, the reason he hasn't applied for permits, so I'm not gonna advocate for him, but they're still doing that road work on this side. So I would assume that work that's going on Olive now, once that's completed, that should move quickly. That building shouldn't take too long to put together and get into construction. Then he is noting to the council tomorrow that I believe by March, he'll have the plans and prepared to present to the plan commission for the office building. Once the office building is in motion and shelled, then the hotel is supposed to come in right after that. They didn't, but not until that office building shell was put in place. Then he's got 2 other retail outlots that he's still in discussions of trying to get a grocer to combine those lots, and if not, to do 2 separate outbuildings.
Still talking with the grocer,
That's what he indicates. I think that's
Okay.
what he'll talk about with the commission tomorrow.
because I'd heard rumblings of the other side in University City that the name Deerbergs keeps popping up.
Yeah, there are plans in their plan commission website that you can find that show the facility along with the Chick-fil-A, the Canes, 2 outlots with inline tenants, and then the mystery 140 square foot structure with underground parking next to Costco. So
What's that? Yeah.
you don't know. They didn't say.
Wow. And
And I think, if you go back to this, the city did a joint task force with representatives of University City back in 2011. And we did an analysis on that, and we even put together a site diagram. And pretty much what was put together by that task force is what's happening. I think that's okay. I mean, we didn't get the Costco, which would have been great, from a revenue perspective, but we just don't have that type of space to give over to a Costco. So it's nice to have it next door. I mean,
I remember seeing some of the plans.
it would have been shoved,
Kinda
and
crazy.
it would have been,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been the highest and best use in there. And I'm glad it's next door. Same with the grocer. The grocer's next door. The community now has a a grocer in close proximity. And I think we have a pretty well multi-use development of our own that can hold. It's
On the easy storage,
Mhm.
They had approximately, between 5,000 and 15,000 square feet, I think, and 15 would be big. First floor retail. Is that still?
yeah, and it's
And
more
have they announced anyone? Have
between
they-
5,000 to 7,000.
5 to
square feet.
7, okay, yeah, I thought 15 would
So,
be,
no, the council does have some criteria on what can be, in those bays, in there, but, their indications have been that they're not gonna get, until they get the building done, they're not gonna be, looking for it, and they seem to be pretty selective in of who they, who would they'd be looking for, that, that building and their presence isn't based on what they generate off of the retail.
and Plant Haven's build out is complete.
Yes.
And one of the things that he indicated when, up in front of us was looking for a restaurant tenant,
Yes.
which would mean that build out would be in a specific fashion. Wonder if there's anything's moving. on
I
that.
need to follow up with him. I would think that they've gone far further. I know he had a tenant in mind and they were in active negotiations. But since the holidays, I haven't talked to them and, I'll follow up and see, where they're going. They, for the most part, they believe they had the building fully occupied already. They believe they had the building fully occupied. They just haven't identified their tenants or closed. with
That's
their
great.
tenants.
That's great.
I'll tell you, on Friday night, I think it was. I don't know, I took my kids down to the area where Kraken Crab, Crazy Crab was, and the Shabu Shabu was like packed.
There
Like
was a
people
lot of
waiting
cars.
in line, and the new boba tea place that opened up next door, packed. And the new the market that opened right there. Oh, it's great. It's like this amazing new string of 3 or 4 restaurants and like shops right there.
Yeah, that's,
And
it's
they're-
got that Taiki Shabu Shabu, that's got a really good reputation.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was jammed with people. Like,
My thing is, you can't order DoorDash from them or anything, because you kind of have to be there.
You
to
gotta eat it
understand.
live, yeah, yeah. Well, what I'm saying, what I'm suggesting is like, it's an interesting time if Party City is gonna disappear. That whole, maybe the Arena City Liquors disappears and like that whole area could be redeveloped in a way that can add some character to that shopping center, which maybe lacks a little. That's all.
Thing is,
I was
companies-
surprised to see it on Friday, like I was happily surprised.
Yeah, companies can, with the, Party City thing, companies can stay in bankruptcy and operate for a year. Yeah. But you never know. All right, Mr. Carl, Councilman Carl.
All right, well, I've kept a list and people have, someone has spoken about most things I was gonna mention. The 2 things I have left. Or there is an opening on PCDC, but it needs to be an attorney. So if you know anyone crazy enough to volunteer for a commission, that's an attorney, please spread the word. The other thing simply is something I would recommend if you ever have time to do, which is a Citizens Police Academy. I went 10 years ago probably, but I found it very interesting. It's something we do jointly with the police departments in several other cities. And it's a whole like 6 or 8 week course where you meet once a week and they go over various topics like, law enforcement stops, the training they go through, just a lot of things, some of the law, whatnot. It is a very interesting course if you have time. So, and there's also an advanced one, or at least there used to be.
Plus, I
And-
guess yeah, I
Sorry?
guess you get to you get to make some nice friends, and they understand what kind of car you're driving, your license plate number.
All right, well, no one harassed me after I went. Anyway, and this was long before I got involved with the city, so actually, well, anyway, those are the only 2 things I have that haven't already been mentioned.
Fantastic. Right, I think that seems to be it. Carlos, if there's nothing else. We are complete.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
They are widening the road.